March 14, 1959. 8:47 a.m. East Harlem, New York. Mayme Johnson was walking to the corner store. She needed eggs, maybe some milk. Just a normal Saturday morning. She was 52 years old. She had been married to Bumpy Johnson for 15 years. She knew the dangers, she knew the risks. But this was Harlem. This was her neighborhood. She felt safe. She was wrong. A black Cadillac pulled up beside her. The door opened. 3 men stepped out. White men, Italian, wearing expensive suits. Mrs. Johnson, one of them said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You need to come with us." Mayme stopped walking. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't know who you are, but you need to leave me alone." "We can't do that," the man said. "See, your husband has something we want. And until he gives it to us, you're coming with us." Mayme looked around. The street was busy. People everywhere. Surely someone would help. But nobody moved. Nobody intervened. Because everyone recognized those men. Everyone knew what they represented. The Italian Mafia. Mayme tried to run, but hands grabbed her. A cloth was pressed over her mouth. Her vision blurred. Her legs gave out. And then everything went black. When she woke up, she was in a warehouse, tied to a chair, 3 men standing in front of her. And on the table beside them was a phone. "Time to make a call," one of them said. "Time to tell your husband that his wife's life depends on what he does next." At 9:15 a.m., Bumpy Johnson received the phone call that would change everything. But the kidnappers made 3 fatal mistakes. First, they underestimated how much Bumpy loved his wife. Second, they underestimated how powerful Bumpy Johnson really was. And third, they gave him 4 hours to respond. 4 hours to think. 4 hours to plan. 4 hours to turn their victory into their worst nightmare. This is the true story of March 14, 1959, the day the Italian Mafia learned that you don't touch Bumpy Johnson's family. The day Harlem proved it was more than just a neighborhood, it was a fortress. And the day that changed the rules of organized crime in New York forever. This is the story of how Bumpy Johnson rescued his wife, destroyed his enemies, and did it all without firing a single bullet. 1944, 15 years earlier, Bumpy Johnson met Mayme at a church social in Harlem. She was a schoolteacher, elegant, intelligent, nothing like the women who usually surrounded men in Bumpy's world. "You're Bumpy Johnson," she said when he introduced himself. "I am. I've heard about you. They say you're dangerous." Bumpy smiled. "They're right. Then why are you at a church social?" "Because even dangerous men need to pray sometimes." Mayme laughed. It was the first time Bumpy had heard that laugh. It wouldn't be the last. They were married 6 months later, and from that day forward, Mayme Johnson became the most protected woman in Harlem. Bumpy had enemies. Lots of them. The Italian Mafia wanted his territory. Rival gangs wanted his power. Corrupt cops wanted him dead, but nobody touched Mayme, because everyone knew the rule. You can challenge Bumpy Johnson. You can fight him. You can try to kill him, but you don't touch his family. For 15 years, that rule held. Until March 14, 1959. In 1958, 1 year before the kidnapping, the Italian Mafia was getting aggressive. They had controlled Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx for decades. But Harlem remained independent. And that infuriated them. Vito Genovese, one of the 5 family bosses, called a meeting with his "Harlem is costing us millions," Vito said. "Numbers, rackets, protection, money, drug trafficking. All controlled by one man, Bumpy Johnson. And I'm tired of it. We've tried to take Harlem before," one capo said carefully. "It didn't work. Bumpy has too much support. Too many connections. Then we don't fight him directly, Vito said. We hurt him, we make him weak. And then we take what's ours. How do we hurt him? Another capo asked. Vito smiled. A cold, calculating smile. We hurt what he loves most. 6 months later, Vito's men started planning. They watched Mayme's routines, learned her schedule, identified her vulnerabilities, and on March 14, 1959, they made their move. 9:15 a.m. Bumpy Johnson's apartment. The phone rang. Bumpy was reading the newspaper, drinking coffee, planning his day. He picked up the phone without thinking. "Hello, Silenzi, hello," he repeated. Then, a voice, cold, emotionless, Bumpy Johnson. "Listen very carefully. We have your wife." The world stopped. Bumpy's hand gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. His breathing slowed. His heart pounded in his ears. "Say that again," he whispered. "We have Mayme. She's alive. For now, but that can change very quickly. If you hurt her, you'll what?" The voice interrupted. "Come after us. That's exactly what we want. See, Bumpy, you've been a problem for too long. You control Harlem like it's your kingdom. But it's not. It belongs to us. The Italian families, and we're taking it back. What do you want? We want everything. Your operations, your territory, your connections. You sign it all over to us by 2 p.m. today, or your wife dies. Simple as that. I need proof she's alive." There was rustling, then a voice Bumpy knew better than his own. "Bumpy, Bumpy, I'm okay." And the phone was yanked away. The cold voice came back. "You have 4 hours. 2 p.m., we'll call with instructions. Don't go to the cops. Don't try to find us. Just wait for our call. Or she dies." The line went dead. For 10 seconds, Bumpy Johnson didn't move. He just sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, staring at nothing. Then he stood up, walked to his closet, pulled out a black notebook, and he started making phone calls. 9:25 a.m., 10 minutes after the call, Bumpy called Eddie the Fixer Morrison. "Eddie, they took Mayme, Genovese family. They want me to give up Harlem. They gave me until 2 p.m. Boss, what do you need? I need you to call everyone. Every contact we have. Every favor we're owed. Every person who owes us loyalty. I need to know where they're keeping her. I need to know who's involved. And I need to know by noon. Consider it done." 9:30 a.m. Bumpy called Marcus the banker Williams. "Marcus, I need you to freeze everything. Everything. Every dollar that flows through Harlem, every payment, every collection, every transaction. I want every Genovese operation in this city to feel the squeeze. Starting right now. That's going to hurt a lot of people, boss. I don't care. They took my wife. Now they pay." 9:35 a.m. Bumpy called Samuel Big Sam Porter. "Sam, I need muscle. 20 men, armed, ready to move in 1 hour. What's the target? I don't know yet. But when I find out, I need to be ready to move fast." "You got it, boss." 9:40 a.m. Bumpy called Lieutenant Frank Hayes, a cop who'd been on Bumpy's payroll for 10 years. "Frank, I need information. The Genovese family grabbed my wife. I need to know every property they own in New York. Every warehouse, every zip house, every building they use for dirty work. Bumpy, if the brass finds out I'm helping you, I don't care about the brass. I care about my wife. You owe me, Frank. I kept you out of prison 3 years ago. Now it's time to pay that debt." There was a long pause. "Give me 30 minutes, Frank finally said. 9:45 a.m. Bumpy called Father Michael O'Brien, a priest at St. Charles Borromeo Church. "Father, it's Bumpy. I need you to spread the word. Mayme's been taken. I need every person in Harlem to keep their eyes open. Anyone sees anything suspicious, Italian men, black Cadillacs, warehouses with activity, need to know immediately. Bumpy, I'll pray for I don't need prayers. Father, I need information. Can you do that? Yes, I can. By 10 a.m., Bumpy Johnson had activated the most powerful information network in New York City. Not the police, not the FBI, but the community, the people of Harlem. The network he had spent 30 years building. And within an hour, the tips started coming in. 10:15 a.m. Eddie Morrison called back. Boss, I got something. 3 people saw a black Cadillac near 116th Street around 9 a.m. 2 white men and a driver. They grabbed a woman matching Mayme's description. Where did they go? East toward the waterfront. That's Genovese territory. Exactly 10:30 a.m., Lieutenant Hayes called back. Bumpy, I got a list. The Genovese family owns 17 properties in Manhattan, but only 3 are on the waterfront. One's a social club. 2 public, one's a restaurant. Also 2 public, but the third. A warehouse on Pier 52, used for storage. But there's never any legitimate cargo going in or out. That's it, Bumpy said. That's where she is. Bumpy, you can't just raid a Genovese warehouse. If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. 10:45 a.m. Marcus Williams called back. Boss, I froze everything. Every Genovese operation in Harlem just dried up. Their loan collections stopped. Their numbers, runners, gone. Their protection payments, nobody's paying. They're losing about $50,000 an hour. Good. Keep the pressure on. 11 a.m. Father O'Brien called back. Bumpy, I have confirmation. Mrs. Chen, who runs the laundromat on 119th Street, her nephew works at the docks. He saw 3 men take a woman into a warehouse on Pier 52 about 2 hours ago. That's the 3rd confirmation, Bumpy said. I know where she is. 11:15 a.m. Bumpy called Big Sam. Pier Kalimapulu, Dua. There's a warehouse. Genovese property. That's where Mayme is. How many men can you have there in 30 minutes? 20, fully armed. Good. But Sam, we're not shooting our way in, not yet. I need you to surround the building. Nobody gets in or out, but nobody fires unless I give the order. Understood? Understood. Boss, by 11:30 a.m., Bumpy Johnson knew exactly where his wife was being held. He had 20 armed men surrounding the building. He had frozen the Genovese family's cash flow. And he had one more phone call to make. The most important call of all. 11:45 a.m. Bumpy Johnson called Vito Genovese directly. Vito's personal line, a number that very few people in New York knew. Vito answered on the 3rd ring. Who is this? This is Bumpy Johnson. There was a pause, then Vito laughed. Bumpy, I didn't expect to hear from you so soon. You ready to give up Harlem already? No, I'm calling to make you an offer. You're not in a position to make offers, Bumpy. I have your wife, you have nothing. Wrong, Bumpy said calmly. I have your money. What are you talking about? In the last hour, I've shut down every Genovese operation in Harlem. Your numbers game. Dead. Your loan collections. Nothing. Your protection rackets. Frozen. You're losing about $50,000 an hour. By the time your deadline hits at 2 p.m., you'll be down over $150,000. Vito's voice turned ice cold. You're bluffing. Call your capos. Ask them how many collections came in this morning. Ask them how much money is flowing. You'll see I'm not bluffing. There was silence on the other end. Bumpy could hear Vito talking to someone in the background. Then Vito came back on the line. His voice was different now. Controlled, but angry. What do you want, Bumpy? I want my wife back. alive, unharmed, and I want every single person involved in this kidnapping to leave Harlem and never come back, and if I refuse, then I keep your money frozen permanently, and I start releasing information. What information? Information about your operation, your connections, your bribes, the cops you own, the judges you bought, the politicians on your payroll. I have files, Vito, detailed files. And if anything happens to my wife, those files go to every newspaper in New York. The FBI, the district attorney, everyone. You wouldn't dare try me. There was a long silence. You're making a big mistake, Bumpy. No, Vito, you made the mistake. You touched my wife. Now you're going to give her back, or I'm going to destroy you. Not with guns, not with violence, but with information, with pressure, with everything I've built over 30 years. Your choice. I need time to think. You have 15 minutes. I'll call you back at noon. And Vito, if my wife is hurt in any way, there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. Bumpy hung up. It was 11:55 a.m. He had been awake for 3 hours. And in those 3 hours, he had located his wife, surrounded the warehouse, frozen the Genovese family's cash flow, and put the most powerful mob boss in New York on the defensive. Now he just needed to close the deal. 12 p.m., noon, exactly. Bumpy called Vito Genovese back. Vito, what's your answer? There was a pause, then Vito spoke. His voice was different now. Still angry but resigned. You win, Bumpy. You can have your wife back. And the men who took her, they'll leave Harlem. You have my word. Your word isn't good enough. I want them out of New York, completely. I want them transferred to your operations in New Jersey, or Chicago, or wherever. But they don't come back to Harlem, ever. Fine, and one more thing. This ends now. No retaliation. No revenge. You took my wife. I responded. Now we're even. But if you ever come after my family, again if you ever even think about it, I will release those files, and I will destroy you. Understood? Understood. Good. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your men at Pier 52. You're going to tell them to release my wife, unharmed, and you're going to tell them to walk away. My men are surrounding the building. If anyone tries anything stupid, we'll handle it. But if they walk away, nobody gets hurt. Done. And Vito, if this is a trap, if anything happens to my wife, I'm coming for you. Not your men, not your capos, you. Personally, it's not a trap, Bumpy. You win. This time, Bumpy hung up. 12:05 p.m. He called Big Sam. Sam, stay in position. Vito's calling his men right now. They're supposed to release Mayme and walk away. But if they try anything, you have my permission to respond. Protect her at all costs. Yes, boss. 12:07 p.m. Bumpy waited. Every second felt like an hour. 12:10 p.m. Big Sam called back. Boss, they're moving. 3 men just walked out of the warehouse. They're getting into a car. No guns visible. Do you see Mayme? Not yet. The door's opening again. Boss, it's her. She's walking out. She looks okay. Bumpy closed his eyes. His hand was shaking. Bring her home. Sam already on it, boss. 12:25 p.m. Mayme Johnson walked into her apartment. Bumpy was standing in the living room, waiting. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Mayme ran to him. Bumpy wrapped his arms around her and held her tight. Are you okay? He whispered. Did they hurt you? I'm fine, Mayme said. Her voice was shaking. I was scared. But I knew you'd come. I knew you'd find me. Always, Bumpy said. Always. They stood there for 5 minutes. Just holding each other. No words. Just relief. Then Bumpy pulled back. Looked at her. Made sure she was really okay. Bumpy, Mayme said. What did you do? How did you get me back? Bumpy smiled, a tired smile, but a real one. I did what I do best. I thought, I planned. And I made them understand that some lines should never be crossed. March 15th, 1959. The day after, word spread through New York's underworld like wildfire. Bumpy Johnson's wife had been kidnapped, and he had gotten her back in less than 4 hours. Without firing a single shot, without killing anyone, without even raising his voice. He had done it with intelligence, with strategy, with a network he had spent 30 years building, and the Italian Mafia had backed down. That afternoon, 3 Genovese soldiers were transferred to Chicago. They never returned to New York. The Genovese family never tried to take Harlem again. Not directly. Not through kidnapping. Not through violence. Because they had learned a lesson. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just powerful because of his guns or his men. He was powerful because he had something they could never have. Loyalty, community, strategy. 2 days later, Vito Genovese called Bumpy. Johnson, I'm calling too. To acknowledge what happened. You mean to apologize? Bumpy asked. I don't apologize, but I will say this. You handled the situation well. Better than most men would have. You earned my respect. I don't need your respect, Vito. I just need you to stay away from my family. You have my word. Good. Because if you ever break it, you know what happens. I know. They never spoke again. March 20th, 1959. 1 week later, Bumpy Johnson called a meeting. Not with his enforcers or his soldiers, but with the young men who looked up to him. The next generation of Harlem. 20 young men sat in Bumpy's apartment, waiting to hear what he had to say. You all heard what happened last week. Bumpy began. My wife was kidnapped. The Italian Mafia thought they could use her to break me, to take Harlem. But they were wrong. And I want to tell you why. He paused, looked at each of them. When Mayme was taken, my first instinct was to grab my gun. To find the men who took her and make them pay. To go to war. Because that's what they expected. That's what they wanted. But I didn't do that. You know why? Because violence is easy. Any fool can pull a trigger. Any idiot can start a war. But strategy, intelligence, patience, that's power. Real power. I got my wife back because I had information. I had connections. I had a community that trusted me enough to help. I had built relationships over 30 years that paid off when I needed them most. And most importantly, I understood leverage. I didn't have to fight the Mafia. I just had to make them understand that hurting me would cost them more than it was worth. I froze their money. I threatened their operations. I showed them that I could destroy them without ever firing a shot. That's the lesson I want you to learn. Violence has its place. Sometimes you have to fight, but violence should be your last option, not your first. Because once you start a war, you never know how it ends. But if you can win without fighting, that's mastery. One of the young men raised his hand. Mr. Johnson, what if they had hurt Mrs. Johnson? What if your plan hadn't worked? Bumpy's face darkened. Then I would have burned their world to the ground. I would have made them regret every breath they ever took. Because there are lines you don't cross. Family is one of them. But here's the thing. They didn't hurt her, because I moved fast enough, smart enough, and with enough force that they knew I was serious. That's the balance. You have to be smart enough to avoid violence, but dangerous enough that people know you're capable of it. That's what makes you powerful. Not fear, not brutality, but respect. People respect intelligence. They respect strategy. And they respect a man who protects what he loves without losing himself in the process. Bumpy looked at all of them one more time. Harlem isn't just territory, it's a community. It's our community, and as long as we protect each other, As long as we stay smart, as long as we remember that our strength comes from unity, not just muscle, nobody can take it from us. Not the mafia, not the cops, not anybody. Remember that. The kidnapping of Mayme Johnson had an impact far beyond just Bumpy and the Italian Mafia. For the people of Harlem, it became a defining moment. A story they would tell for generations. They had seen their community come together. They had seen information flow through churches, schools, barbershops, and corner stores. They had seen ordinary people, laundromat owners, dock workers, store clerks play a role in bringing Mayme home safely. And they had seen that when Harlem united, they were unstoppable. This wasn't just about Bumpy Johnson anymore. It was about community power. It was about showing that black people in Harlem weren't helpless. They weren't victims. They were organized. They were connected. They were powerful. 6 months after the kidnapping, a group of Italian mobsters tried to shake down a Harlem business owner. They wanted protection money. They wanted control. The business owner refused. This is Bumpy Johnson's neighborhood. You want to operate here, you ask him first. The mobsters left, and they never came back. Word had spread. Harlem was off limits, not because of violence, but because of unity, because of organization, because the community would fight back, not with guns, but with information, economic pressure, and collective resistance. Bumpy Johnson had turned a kidnapping into a lesson that would protect Harlem for decades to come. Years later, Mayme Johnson wrote about that day in her memoir. She described the terror of being grabbed off the street, the fear of not knowing if she'd ever see Bumpy again, the cold warehouse, the men with guns. But she also described something else. Even when I was tied to that chair, she wrote, I wasn't afraid, not really. Because I knew Bumpy. I knew what he was capable of, not violence, not rage, but intelligence. Strategy, planning. I knew he would find me. Not because he was the strongest man in Harlem, but because he was the smartest. And because he had spent 30 years building relationships, earning trust, and creating a network that would do anything for him. When those men got the phone call telling them to release me, I saw the look on their faces. They were terrified, not of what Bumpy would do to them, but of what he had already done to their organization. That's when I understood. My husband wasn't just a gangster, he was a strategist, a general. A man who understood that real power doesn't come from how many people you can hurt. It comes from how many people you can protect. That day changed me. It made me realize that Bumpy wasn't the monster the newspapers made him out to be. He was a protector, a leader, a man who would do anything for the people he loved. And I was proud to be his wife. Inside the Genovese family, the kidnapping was a disaster. Vito Genovese called a meeting with his capos 3 days after Mayme was released. We failed, Vito said bluntly. We had the perfect opportunity to break Bumpy Johnson. And we failed. Boss, he froze our operations. One capo said defensively, he cut off our cash flow. He had information we didn't know he had. Exactly, Vito snapped. He outsmarted us. A black street boss from Harlem outsmarted the most powerful crime family in New York. Do you understand how that makes us look? The room was silent. From now on, Vito continued, Harlem is off limits. We don't operate there. We don't interfere there. We leave Bumpy Johnson alone. Because trying to take him down costs us more than it's worth. What about respect? Another capo asked. If we back down, doesn't that make us look weak? No, Vito said. It makes us look smart. There's no profit in a war with Harlem. Bumpy has too much support, too much organization, and he's proven he can hurt us without ever firing a shot. That's not weakness. That's recognizing reality. One of the older capos nodded. Bumpy Johnson is different from other street bosses. He thinks like us, plans like us. But he has something we don't. What's that? Vito asked. Community. His people actually like him. They protect him. They feed him information. We rule through fear. He rules through respect. And in the long run, respect is stronger. Vito sighed. Maybe, but it doesn't matter now. The decision is made. Harlem belongs to Bumpy Johnson. And that's the end of it. For the first time in New York's organized crime history, the Italian Mafia formally recognized a black gangster's territory as sovereign. Not because they were afraid of violence, but because they respected intelligence. 1 month after the kidnapping, Bumpy Johnson sat on his apartment balcony, smoking a cigar, looking out over Harlem. Mayme came out and sat beside him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how close I came to losing you, but you didn't. But I could have. If I had reacted differently. If I had gone in with guns blazing like they expected. If I had let anger control me instead of logic." Mayme took his hand. "But you didn't, because that's not who you are." Bumpy smiled. "You know what's funny? I spent 30 years building a reputation as a tough guy, an enforcer, someone you don't mess with. But when it really mattered, none of that saved you." "Then what did Mayme?" asked. "Relationships, information, strategy, all the things I learned from Stephanie. St. Clair, all the lessons about thinking 3 steps ahead, about understanding leverage, about knowing that real power doesn't come from how many people fear you, but from how many people will help you when you need them. The Mafia thought they could beat me with violence. But I beat them with something they'll never have. Community, loyalty, trust, and that's worth more than any gun." Mayme rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "I'm just glad you're home," Bumpy replied. They sat there for an hour, watching the sun set over Harlem, the neighborhood they had protected, the community they had built, the home that was truly theirs. The kidnapping and rescue of Mayme Johnson had ripple effects throughout New York's criminal underworld for years to come. In 1961, when another crime family tried to move into Harlem, they were stopped immediately. "Remember what happened to Genovese?" they were told. "You want to end up like them?" In 1963, when the FBI tried to pressure Bumpy's associates to testify against him, they refused. Not out of fear, but out of loyalty. Because Bumpy had proven he would do anything to protect his people. In 1965, when Malcolm X was assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom, Bumpy Johnson was one of the first people to arrive. He helped secure the scene, protected Malcolm's family, and made sure the killer didn't escape. Because protecting Harlem wasn't just about his own interests, it was about protecting everyone who lived there. And in 1968, when Bumpy Johnson died of a heart attack at Wells Restaurant, over 5,000 people attended his funeral. They came from every borough in New York, criminals and cops, teachers and preachers, business owners and street vendors. They came because Bumpy Johnson had shown them something important, that power doesn't have to be destructive, that leadership doesn't have to be cruel, that you can protect your community without losing your humanity. At the funeral, Mayme Johnson stood at the casket, looking at her husband one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for always protecting me, for always putting family first, for showing the world that a black man from the streets could be smarter, stronger, and better than anyone gave him credit for. I love you, always." Historians who study organized crime in New York often overlook the kidnapping of Mayme Johnson. It's not as dramatic as shootouts or gang wars. It doesn't have the violence that makes for good television. But in many ways, it's the most important event in Harlem's criminal history. Because it established a precedent. Harlem was independent, self-governing, protected by its own people. The Italian Mafia controlled most of New York for decades. They had politicians, judges, and cops in their pockets. They had money, guns, and international connections. But they couldn't take Harlem. Not through violence, not through intimidation, not through kidnapping. Because Bumpy Johnson had built something they couldn't break. A community that protected itself. This wasn't just about one man's power. It was about collective resistance. It was about black people in the 1950s, in the middle of Jim Crow, in the middle of systemic racism, in the middle of economic oppression saying, "No, this is ours, and you can't take it." That's the real story of March 14, 1959, not just that Bumpy Johnson rescued his wife, but that a community came together to make it possible. That's the legacy. That's what matters. Today, over 60 years later, the story of Mayme Johnson's kidnapping is still told in Harlem. Older residents remember hearing about it from their parents. Younger people learn about it in community history classes. It's become part of the neighborhood's identity. But what lessons can we take from this story? Lesson 1. Intelligence beats violence. Bumpy could have started a war. He could have killed the kidnappers. But that would have led to more death, more destruction, more pain. Instead, he used strategy. He froze their money. He leveraged information. He made them understand that hurting him cost more than it was worth. Lesson 2. Community is power. Bumpy didn't rescue Mayme alone. He had help from dock workers, laundromat owners, priests, cops, and hundreds of ordinary people who saw something and said something. That's the power of community. When people work together, they can achieve what individuals never could. Lesson 3. Reputation matters. Bumpy had spent 30 years building trust. When he needed help, people helped him. Not because they feared him, but because they respected him. Because he had always protected them. That's the power of reputation. It's not built overnight, but when you need it, it's worth everything. Lesson 4. Family comes first. Bumpy Johnson was a gangster, a criminal, someone who broke the law regularly. But when his wife was in danger, none of that mattered. He risked everything, his freedom, his safety, his entire operation to bring her home. That's love. That's loyalty. That's what matters most. Lesson 5. Some lines should never be crossed. The Mafia thought they could use Mayme as leverage. They were wrong, because some things are sacred. Family, home, community. And when you cross those lines, you face consequences that no amount of money or power can protect you from. These lessons aren't just about gangsters and crime. They're about life, about how we protect what we love, about how we build communities that last, about how we face adversity with intelligence instead of just emotion. Bumpy Johnson taught us that. And on March 14, 1959, he proved it. This is the untold story of Mayme Johnson's kidnapping. The story Hollywood doesn't tell. The story that shows Bumpy Johnson not as a violent gangster, but as a strategic leader, a protector, a husband who would do anything for his wife. This is the story of how 4 hours changed everything. How a kidnapping became a lesson. How a crisis became a testament to the power of community, intelligence, and loyalty. This is the story of March 14, 1959. The day the Italian Mafia learned that some people can't be broken, some neighborhoods can't be taken, and some men are more dangerous with their minds than others are with their guns. This is the story of Bumpy Johnson. And this is the legacy of Harlem. Subscribe to Black Ledger for more untold stories, more hidden truths, more real history, because the real stories are always better than Hollywood fiction. Thank you for watching.